Greetings, Kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to My World of Darkness, and this is episode 20 of the Thicker Than Water recap. Tonight we did something a little bit different, and we ran this wonderful pre-made module by Renegade Gaming for Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. And we had a lot of fun. I do have to say that we're not done. We actually got about halfway through it and then had to stop because we only played for about 4 hours a night, or at least we try to. Sometimes we go to 6 or 7 or 8. But starting at 8 o'clock at night, we try to end around midnight. And given our game's social mechanics, I'll put it that way, we did have to make a little bit of variation with the way things went. So this went a little strange. We actually started separated into 3 coteries, or 3 groups of Kindred, due to the fact that everybody has, although they interact quite a bit, as far as them being Kindred go, they do have different lives outside of the things that they end up doing together. And when we decided to run this, I decided that I was going to try to showcase how different these characters actually were, and how strange it is that these characters are actually involved. So at the very beginning, I went ahead and I decided to start the game off by reading the tagline that is present in this book on the first actual, getting into the story page, which says, "New Year's Eve. You've been invited to a party to talk to Isabella, a friend of a friend. She's being harassed by someone who knows too much about vampires. Can you deal with this last piece of business before the ball drops at midnight?" I just loved that line right there, and I thought that the idea of having to deal with this kind of thing, and the fact that it's timed, really, the whole idea that you have till midnight to figure out exactly what the situation is, if you're going to do anything with it, was a lot of fun. But I was thinking, considering the fact that in Portland, Oregon, the sun typically sets this time of year around 6 o'clock. It's around 5:45, I think, is actually what the New Year's sunset was for this. I was going into exactly how things were going to be. And the story opens up with one of the members of the coterie, which the game is supposed to be played with 4 to 6 Camarilla vampires. And you can see where the problem came about for my game, due to the fact that my game is primarily Anarch. And even that is, are they really? We know Tinia is. But anybody else? Is anybody else really Anarch? Or are they just a bunch of snotty, spoiled independents who haven't really found which side of the fence that they fit on? But it shows that someone at the very beginning is pestered by a friend. That somebody that they care about, this Isabella, is being stalked effectively by what appears to be hunters or something. Straight out, I'll just go ahead and read what the majority of the stuff says, and I'll tell you what my characters did to react to such things. It is the evening of December 31st. The Kindred characters awaken as normal, but one of them discovers that a mortal connection is desperately trying to get in touch. It can be a series of text messages left to the character's ghoul, a written letter slid under the Haven door, or word of mouth left at the character's usual haunts. The gist of this message is as followed. Get in touch now. A friend of mine is getting threatening text messages that mention bloodsuckers. This is time sensitive. The character in question can choose to ignore it, but the messages will continue to get increasingly frantic until the character contacts them back. Once the vampire gets in touch, their contact explains the situation. In this, I went ahead and I changed it a little bit. We went ahead and showcased the opening scene for this as being dawn, because I needed somebody who would have a friend to get a hold of them. And a reason why this person, Isabella, would actually be connected to the group in some fashion. Why would this person be someone that is basically standing on the outside of this coterie of vampires, but could have a loose connection? And I decided Brittany, because Isabella, as we later find out in this story, is a stream witch. She's a girl who does witchy shit, as she says, on the internet, and has gained the wrong attention. The fact that her name is Bruja without an H, it's just Bruja, which is Spanish for witch, is probably one of the reasons why she got caught as much as she did. Now, I did the stereotypical white girl in the winter look for Brittany when it came to this. She's wearing a massive coat, tiny shorts, and sandals. I felt the need to add some interesting descriptions in on this, just because it really does focus on what time of year it is, but also what kind of people we're dealing with. And Brittany is that person. She's that person who would put herself through pain of winter to be cute. So when Dawn finally answers the door, she starts off the conversation. Brittany starts off the conversation with, "Just letting you know that I have a cattle auction that I have to go to in a couple days because of you." Now, this is because Brittany is being coerced into doing some of the work for Dawn that Sam has put her up to, and Sam is trying to get adult cattle for his big ranch that he has, because he's trying to make it so that he has more things to feed off of, and the cattle that he has for his property currently are all babies, and they take a long time to grow. So right now we've got Brittany, who's just throwing, "I'm doing all this stuff for you, and I never ask you for anything, so this is what's going on." And Brittany explains the situation, that there's a girl that she knows named Isabella, who's throwing a party tonight, and she's being stalked by people who seem to know a little bit too much about vampires. But to Brittany's knowledge, she does not think that she has any connection to vampires. Now, Brittany has heard the word Bruja, and she connects those dots. She thinks that the reason why people are after Isabella is because she's outright calling herself a Bruja on a platform, on an open internet platform. Now, something fun about this whole thing is this kicks off the prince is a Bruja. What if it's the Camarilla? And I love that. I love the fact that this side of the game instantly thinks that the Camarilla is at fault on this. I really do. I think that's just a lot of fun. Brittany gives her the address and a description of Isabella and takes off. Also, due to the fact that things are happening on her cell phone, and it has to do with a computer-based business, Brittany thinks that Sam actually might be the one who's threatening this girl. I don't know. Brittany has started to distrust Sam quite a bit since she started living on his property. We'll just put it that way, because Brittany is the one who has actually been doing all of the mundane aspects of running the actual acreage that Sam owns. Dawn talks her down from thinking that and decides that they're going to go ahead and get a hold of Sam, and tells Sam that he's got to dress up, they're going to a party, explains the situation, and everybody believes the Camarilla is at fault. Across town, while this is happening, a vampire by the name of Duke, a Toreador anarch, who has, the way that we've played it off is that he's been there this whole time. He's just hasn't been showcased enough. I have a lot of NPCs in the background where I haven't had to actually give names off yet. And the fact that these modules come out do make it quite easy for me to go ahead and have that kind of thing be taken care of. The fact that there are nameless SPCs that can the blanks can be filled in later does come in handy to me as a storyteller. With all this going on, Tinia is approached by Duke, the Toreador, and tells her that his ghoul, Isabella, is receiving threatening text. The fact is, Duke hates the Camarilla. Straight out. He's massively paranoid. He's a huge conspiracy theorist, and all answers point to the Camarilla. To describe Duke to my players, I told them that he said that he was trying to look for a parking lot one time. He blames the Camarilla because he couldn't find one. But in general, what I mean is anything that happens, he blames the Camarilla. The newspaper gets delivered late to his house. It's the Camarilla's fault. So Duke gets Tinia to come along with and help to basically just play bodyguard at Isabella's party. I also put out there that the reason why Isabella is throwing this massive New Year's Eve party and not attending one of somebody else's herself is because Duke suggested that she throw a party to be surrounded by a bunch of people because he does not believe that the Camarilla will attack when completely confronted by a mass amount of people. That they're going to try to do things quietly and covert, and if there's too many people surrounding Isabella, she's going to be safe from who's ever sending her these texts. So Tinia agrees to help, and she goes ahead and she brings along her new friend, Gabriel, along for the ride. And then that brings us to group number 3, which are our Camarilla group. So in the Elysium at the Benson Hotel, I went ahead and said that John, Anaroma's child, is discussing with her how upset he is on this whole situation, the fact that a streamer that he pays attention to, named Isabella, is getting threats. Now, I did not go into detail on how he knows this, but it's most likely going to be friend of a friend stuff, because as a Toreador, he's going to try to be as close as possible to anybody who he finds interesting in any way. I play the Toreador up as almost like a light stalking is just par for the course. So with Anaroma caring what her child wants, but also wanting him to shut up, because parents don't care about justice, they care about silence, she goes and finds Axel. As one of the prince's bodyguards, Axel has not really had much to do, due to the fact that as one of the prince's bodyguards, and the prince has been doing his own thing since Alicia has been returned to him. He's pretty much just open. He's open for business. So Anaroma, and I love that because Axel and Anaroma's clashing historically. Anaroma runs over to Axel and says, I have something that I need you to do. I need you to attend this party and make sure that this girl is okay. But not trusting Axel fully because she does not really like Clan La Sombra as it is, Anna goes ahead and contacts a Toreador that she feels is not pulling enough weight in the city, Justin Murphy, dragging the last of our characters into this storyline, and tells him that he is going to attend this party. Now, Justin, on one hand, is like, party? He's happy to go. But on the other hand, he really doesn't want to do anything. And at one point in time, there's a little bit of a back and forth where it's like, you want me to do something, give me status. And she's like, if you want status, go do something. So it's very fun because there's an instant nagging between the two characters of Justin and Anaroma. And this is actually funny for me because Anaroma was originally played by Nick Novice, who's playing Justin. Like, this is when Thicker Than Water was run in the 2nd edition revised version of Laws of the Night for Mind's Eye Theater. Anaroma was one of Nick's characters, and it was just one of those characters that I couldn't let die out, and Anna became such an integral part of the city that I wanted to just throw her back into circulation with this whole thing. So watching Nick as Justin fight with me as one of Nick's old characters was just comedical on my level. So all of the characters end up converging at this party, and I'll go ahead and read you the description of what it says. The address leads you to an old brownstone apartment building. The windows of the bottom floor are dark, and you can see colored lights strobing in several of the top floor windows. You can also hear a cacophony of distorted buzzing music thumping coming from the building. It seems like the whole building is on this New Year's Eve party. So, all of the characters, I went ahead and I separated things as things were going, but the characters all converge on this brownstone building, which is Isabella's party. The first characters that show up are Tinia and Gabriel, who show up to the address to find that Duke has two other anarchs. Duke is a suave anarch toreador, and he's sitting there in his tuxedo print T-shirt and ripped up leather jacket. But what they've decided to do is the anarchs have decided to set up a small New Year's Eve party of their own in the alley outside of Isabella's apartment, just to keep an eye on her, but not to ruin what's going on. This was really fun because in the actual module, Duke and his anarchs just show up. There's no distinction of what they were doing in that alley. They just kind of show up and start trouble. With my game, I've got Gabriel and Tinia who are in the alley with them, and they've brought folding chairs, and there's a boombox, and it's basically it's just a street party that's going on in this alley between these 5 anarchs who have decided that 5 is enough to handle whatever the Camarilla is going to throw at them, because they're expecting ghouls or something like that. So they are there. The next people who showed up at the party are the next people who show up at the party are Dawn and Sam. Now Sam has done what Sam does. He dresses up in some overly fancy posh clothing, and he has used vicissitude on himself to turn himself into someone who would not be recognized in this area. So they head up, and while they're going, when they go inside, they see that there's a handwritten note taped to the elevators that says "Take the stairs." They find a trail of pieces of paper with little hand-drawn Sharpie arrows that are going up the stairs to the top floor. And when they get there, they find that there are 2 rather burly gentlemen wearing black t-shirts with, it doesn't say anything on here. In fact, the character description here says, as the characters reach the top floor, the stairs are blocked by 2 large muscular men wearing black t-shirts with stickers that say security on both of them. What I said is that there was duct tape. There's just silver duct tape that said security in Sharpie on their shirts, and they're sitting there acting overly professional about not letting anybody inside. This was kind of fun because after a little bit of coercion from Dawn and some flirting, they're able to get inside. So that's not that big of a deal on them. And then as they get inside, they realize that the party is just jumping on the inside. As they get inside, that's when Axel and the very reluctant Justin show up. And they see the same thing, the closed elevator, the stairs. They get up there, and there is so much trouble with these 2 trying to get through the 2 human guards. It's really funny to the point where Axel actually dominates one of them at one point to check the list. They say, "You're not on the list," and he goes, "Dominate," and he dominates him to check the list. So he checks the list again. He says, "Yeah, you're not on the list," because dominate doesn't work like that. You can't tell somebody to do something and then, well, I guess I should actually say dominate works exactly like that. When you tell somebody to do something, they're going to do exactly what you tell them. So while this is all going on, it's just so funny. Damien ends up intimidating one of them to back off, while the other one starts to get in their face, and then Justin is able to use Daunt to freak the other one out enough to get past. So they have now threatened past security, and as they walk in, the party is very interesting here. It says that in the hallway behind the guards, the music gets much louder. Most of the apartment doors are open, and a few different songs are playing loudly and simultaneously. People are milling about between the apartments, and several are standing in the hallway with drinks. In one doorway, 3 people are making out with each other, and behind one closed door, the characters can hear the unmistakable sounds of sex. So it gets into the whole thing there. People could feed here pretty easily, that there's so many people, there's not enough room with what's going on. It'd be pretty easy to get away with feeding, depending on like siren stereotypes and things like that. So at this point in time, the characters are trying to figure out where they are, and we've got 2 groups. We've got Dawn and Sam, who have at this point split up because Sam is now using his presence powers, along with the fact that he has heightened social traits due to his vicissitude, to flirt with everybody possible. It's actually kind of funny because he's just like, this is Candy with an I, this is Cindy with an I, this is Stacy with an I, and it's just dumb with the way the interaction is, but it's also completely totally Sam. It's just something you can see him doing. With that being the case, Dawn finds her way over to Isabella. Isabella looks much like she did in the picture, a Latin Latina woman with dark makeup, black lipstick, and a black party dress covered in lace cobwebs. She has a glass of champagne in her hand, and as she sits on the kitchen counter and talks loudly with a few other similarly monochrome friends as you approach, her eyes go wide and she stiffens. "Who invited you?" she yells over the noise of the party. I think this probably would have been the best thing for Dawn to do. Dawn is so charismatic and able to pretty much get anything that she needs, and she also has a lot in common with Isabella due to the fact that they both run spiritual online enterprises in a fashion. And that's actually one of the reasons why everything has come together the way that it has, because Brittany is in contact with Isabella because she pays attention to the competition and tries to make friends with other people in the business so that they can do various things. So Dawn bombs at this. It's really, really bad. Eventually, she's able to talk Isabella into another room. They go into Isabella's personal room. They talk about it, and Dawn is massively just not what Isabella is going for, because I don't know why. It just was not Dawn's night to be Dawn. They got very little information other than the fact that Isabella goes by Bruja while she's online, that there's no H. But Dawn understands that this is probably just some awful coincidence. But they are also able to piece out the fact that she's been getting really, really threatening text messages that have just getting worse and worse as time goes by. The one that specifically said bloodsucker really kind of made her unnerved. And at this point in time, Isabella thinks that the people that are coming to talk to her right now are the people who are trying to kill her. So Isabella feels threatened. She ends up storming out of the room with Axel, having listened in on this whole interaction. He decides to go confront Dawn, who has already gone into obfuscate while she's in the room, because she decides that she's just going to follow Isabella where she's going and try to keep her safe, since Sam doesn't really seem to be being much help. So when Axel turns the corner and sees that Dawn's not there, he's just very, very confused, but he does get the whisper from Dawn telling him to move out of the way. Dawn tries to talk to her again, and she ends up leaving with her group of friends into another one of the apartments on the first floor and shutting the door, with Isabella threatening to call the police after that. Justin, seeing all this happening, then attempts to talk to her too, which, again, she threatens to call the police. Axel's trying to use his oblivion to be able to use shadow perspective to see inside the room to see exactly what's going on. And as he decides that he's going to knock on the door and to talk to her also, she finally has just had enough and does in fact call the police. And all of the Kindred pretty much are heading out. Now, a few minutes before this, when Sam sees how disgruntled Isabella is, he decides that he's going to go ahead and take off. But as he leaves, he ends up seeing Duke and Tinia and them in the alley, and decides that he's not going to think. He's not going to think. Sam decides that he's not going to think. He goes down into the alley and he acts. It is like watching a really bad skit where a narc is trying to interact with kids who are smoking pot in a park. Like, I almost expect him to go, "Hello, fellow kindred. I am also looking for the blood." You know, that kind of thing. So what ends up happening is he walks over and Duke ends up getting behind him to check around the corner to see if anybody else is coming. And as Sam is getting comfortable and sits in one of the chairs and starts chatting up the anarchs who are not having the fact that this guy, this stuffed shirt, comes and sits down with him, Tinia doesn't recognize him. Gabriel doesn't recognize him because he's changed his face. So Duke sneaks up behind him and hits him over the head with the boombox. And then it's just an anarch free-for-all. And at one point in time, because they don't know what's going on, they think he might be a ghoul, they think he might just be some crazy guy. One of the anarchs does go to feed on him and finds out he's Kindred, which they announce, and Duke flies into, he's Camarilla, and and everybody just starts beating the living crap out of him. He ends up getting his hands tied behind his back, and it's getting bad. But as this is going on, the coterie, or the rest of the coterie, is starting to come out of the party. They notice this is happening because Duke and his anarchs are not exactly smooth criminals. We'll put that, because they're actually people who are across the street with cell phones out who are recording this entire altercation where this guy is having just the crap beaten out of him in an alley on New Year's. And Dawn decides that she's going to go ahead and use her chemistry, her Fata Morgana, to make everyone in the area hear sirens, hear and see the blue and red flashing lights of police cars. This makes the humans scatter, thank God, but it also makes Justin freak out and run back in to avoid the police. Damien decides that he's going to go up onto the roof of the building and watch what's going on downstairs from there. Eventually, Dawn starts talking to the anarchs, and she explains that this is Sam, and the beatdown stops, but Sam tries to run with Tinia chasing after him so that she can release him from the duct tape. While all this is happening, there ends up being like there's a gunshot, cops are called. It's one big cluster, and I'm probably telling you this out of order because so much has happened. But they end up deciding that it's a good idea to get out of the street. Sam runs off. Tinia catches up with him, releases him from the tape, and then comes back to the group. But Sam runs off, as Sam does. He's going to be an antisocial Zemitzi for the rest of the night, where he's just listening in on everything through people's cell phones without actually being there. Dawn ends up catching up with Justin, and Justin has taken a special interest in Dawn. They've had a couple of in-week or downtime interactions together. Let's just go ahead and say that Dawn is just Justin's type. So they end up going into a apartment on the bottom floor of the same brownstone building, while they can actually hear the real cop cars showing up. And it's actually more than they had expected to have been there. And what had happened was... was that Isabella had been trying to get the cops to help her out with this situation all week, and they had just been completely ignoring her, telling her to stop streaming, which is her business. Come on, people. Telling her to change her number, to block their number, all that stuff. So when she said, the people who have been sending me threatening messages, I believe, are here, the cops came. When someone heard a gunshot outside during the whole scuffle, the cops were called. So with everything going on, two groups of police officers end up showing up. One to interview the people in the party to find out if they could find out anything about these stalkers, and another one has shown up to talk to people about the violence that was going on outside a few minutes ago. So I've got the majority of the coterie minus Axel and Sam inside this room. Now Axel has decided to call Anaroma and let her know what's going on. So within minutes, Jacob Monroth, the sheriff of the city, shows up and asks Damien why exactly he's not doing his job. He needs to be keeping an eye on the anarchs who are involved in this situation with this Isabella girl, and that they are going to send someone else to guard the top of the building, due to the fact that the Harpy / Toreador Primogen is interested in what's going on. Axel then has a fun time trying to get back into the building. He doesn't even really know where the coterie went at this point, but he's using shadow perspective to try to locate them. On the inside, Justin and Dawn are just trying to figure out whether or not they should just leave and screw this whole thing off. But the thing is, this is actually starting to pull on Dawn's heartstrings, because she has a cannot leave a damsel in distress personal tenet, and she realizes that if this girl actually is in trouble, that she cannot leave her so easily. Now, this actually ended up being one of my favorite scenes that I got to play, because I don't have many totally irrational SPCs. I'm pretty sure if Duke survives this whole thing, I'm going to end up keeping Duke, because he's fun. I ended up having like a fake gun prop while I'm sitting there just waving around like a madman, screaming about how everybody else is being irrational and dangerous. And at points, I actually end up like slamming the gun into my head. I really just played him off as a incredibly unstable individual, and he was a lot of fun, especially considering the fact that he was a Toreador and not a Brujah, which a lot of people would play that off as a Brujah. But I really do like the way that Duke was written in this. I think his character sheet is very well done, considering how he is as a person. And then with all that going on, he ends up ticking off Tinny at one point in time, because he ends up looking at her and saying that her sire was useless and horrible for the Anarchs anyway, and he was always working with the Camarilla the whole time. And she ends up laying him out, which was interesting. I played that character to the point where Tinia could not handle him any longer and had to beat the crap out of him. She ended up hitting him so hard with one hit, with straight out one hit, one good roll, where she ended up taking away the majority of his health levels and doubling back over. Basically, all of his superficial damage was taken up, and he had taken a few aggravated. And I actually just said, you know what? He's knocked out. He has fortitude in the storyline, but it's the mental fortitude where you can't like interrogate. So I went ahead and I knocked his ass out, and let Tinia have that little victory. But they did start interacting fairly well. Eventually, he ends up waking up and realizing that they do need to all work together on this one, and he eventually stops being as offensive to the Camarilla characters, because he's afraid of Tinia at this point. He doesn't want to get hit again, and he realizes that his two friends that he brought with him were not going to help him when it came to fighting back against Tinia, because she has built up a bit of a person who can get things done reputation in the Anarch group, given the way that the Chronicle has run. So they decide that they need to get out of there, and as the cops they seem to be in increasing numbers, they decide that they're going to have this conversation at Gabriel's little not a chop shop in Fulton. And Dawn ends up using Cloak the Gathering to get them out. But I ended up having Duke's NPC Anarch coterie stay behind to keep an eye on Isabella. So we now have Camarilla watching Isabella, and we have Anarchs watching Isabella. And I also had, due to suggestion from player characters, they ended up having Isabella ends up sending them the badge numbers of the police officers who are talking to her, and the characters who are in Cloak the Gathering Obfuscate end up going out and looking at the badge numbers of the cops who are downstairs questioning about the gunshots. And they end up giving the badge numbers to Axel, who asks his contact, who is Mason, who works in the police, to double check to make sure that they're all real cops. They were all legitimately sent to that area on purpose. And then they skedaddle. They get out, they go over to the chop shop, and they decide that they are going to pull their information and find out what they know. And this is what they know. And this is all of the information that they know. That the girl's name is Isabella. Just Isabella. She doesn't go by a last name or anything. She goes by the handle Bruja online. Bruja with no H. That is the name of her online streaming personality. She talks about paganism, kitchen magic, and other self-described witchy shit, as she puts it. She's been getting anonymous text messages recently. At first, she ignored them, as she's used to a certain amount of harassment and stalking for being a woman on the internet. But these specific texts have gotten more and more specific and disturbing. In particular, the text started calling her a bloodsucker and implied that she's either killed someone or helped cover up a murder. The harasser has mentioned that something will happen tonight, and if you know what's good for you, you better have your phone ready, as it said. She did go to the police, but they couldn't do much about it, and they gave her non-advice such as block the number and maybe don't stream anymore. Working with Duke, they did also find out that she is his ghoul, and a recent one, only by a few months. That she was made his ghoul before she started getting the harassing texts. She knows about the Camarilla and has been told that they're bad news, and that her sire is an anarch, which is Duke. Duke is also very paranoid on the Camarilla as it is. She also knows that he's a Toreador, but doesn't know what that means. She also doesn't know what the word Bruja means, other than the fact that it's Spanish for witch, and that this is just a massive coincidence that she came up with that name. So as they're discussing all of these things, he ends up getting a phone call. Duke ends up getting a phone call and stepping outside, and I let the player characters have a little bit of a chance to talk. Now, they end up just listening on the phone call, unfortunately, but when he comes in, he does tell them straight out that she just received another text, and that the text specifically says that she's to bring her master to a specific warehouse in a nearby industrial park at midnight tonight. And if he doesn't show up, everything the stalkers know about her will be posted online. So, yeah, they've come to this point, and that is where we called boast. From the time we started playing game that night to that point, when Isabella got that last text message telling her that if she didn't show up, all of her information would be spilt online at midnight in the game session. With everything that's going on, I would say that it's probably like 10 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and say that this industrial park is located in Fulton as well. And we're going to continue on with that. So as you can see, we ran the storyline pretty much point for point. The players were actually very surprised to find out that aside from the fact that the characters all started in 3 separate places, it's pretty much gone word for word everything. I'm really enjoying this, and the fact that there is this low fantasy element to this is just so much fun, because I have such a hard time not going overboard. And right now they've just dealt with a couple of situations involving interacting with people and a small scuffle in an alley. But obviously there was more detail to all of this, and the players can fill that in if they want, but that is pretty much where everything came to a head. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say that it's probably, like I said, it's about 10 o'clock, and so they have about 2 hours of in-game time to finish the rest of all that's going on, given the amount of time for travel and all that stuff. So yeah, I hope everybody's enjoying this. I sure as hell am. The storyline is put together really well. The SPCs are relatable and entertaining, and I really can't wait to see where this all goes. I do like the idea of adding Duke to my standard set of SPCs. Now that he's been interacting, I think he is going to continue to interact. So yeah, that's how the Thicker Than Water group is handling this storyline. What about you guys? Have you guys run this? I know a few of you have. I've heard good things, positive I've heard positive things about this storyline. Did you have to step outside the box at all? If so, what are the details? And I cannot wait to get back to you next week on what we did to conclude this. After that, also, I have some amazing storylines of my own that I can't wait to get back into. So, I am Voivode Maquette. This is My World of Darkness, and a look at the chronicle provided to us that I'm enjoying. I'm enjoying this a lot. Thank you for listening. Have a nice night.